Well, greetings to everyone at home. We are back again with a series of She Unleashed. And today I'm very excited. I have one powerhouse and one phenomenal woman who is everything in one. So today I'll introduce you to Dr. Kyla. And she has a list of accolades. I could talk on forever on what she's doing. And she was a perfect candidate actually for what we're discussing today, which is resilience, especially at the time of exactly what we're going through, the pandemic. And how do we handle resilience as women, as female leaders? And we said we'll take that context because she's also a female leader. She's been through a lot of crises in her life, and she's had to overcome them. So Dr. Kyla is a lot of things. She's a global board director. She is an author of a number of books. She is by training a consultant, and her focus is organizational design and change management. She is also, she's a doctorate dissertation and master's thesis committee member, which is a big concept, where she sits as part of the committee that evaluates dissertations and theses for the masters. She is a lot of things. She's also a recipient of a 35 plus corporate awards and is a Fulbright scholar. So I don't want to, I actually like saying all of these accolades because people have worked for these accolades. So I do allow to give it all the acknowledgement because it just talks to the powerhouse that you are. Dr. Kyla, welcome, and thank you so much for making time to talk to us.
Thank you so much for having me, inviting me. I'm looking forward to providing some insights and nuggets to your audience and hope that all the information I share today will help someone not only survive, but thrive in life or in their business, or if they're working for another organization. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. We had a brief chat just before we came online, and we talked about the concept of resilience and what is it exactly, and what does it mean to you, and what is your, attraction to this thing of resilience?
Sure, and I believe we're recording, so I want to give much information as possible to attendees. Basically, resilience in a nutshell, to be brief, is the ability to quickly overcome an adverse situation, and not just overcoming in an adverse situation after the fact, but being able to go through an adverse situation, looking at the positive instead of just the negative of that adversity, but being able to devise strategies on how to bounce back quickly.
Mm-hmm. What is this attraction of yours to crisis, to adversity, to overcoming it? I think we had a brief chat before going online, and we spoke about how that actually resonates with your purpose in life and your background and what you've had to go through, but also how you encounter, and have to take people through a number of crises in your professional work as a change management agent, as well as an organizational design person who has to go through corporates who are going through change.
Sure, and throughout the presentation, I just want to let the audience know I'll be looking at notes sometimes. Since I have many different roles, I have to make notes to make sure that I go over important points that I like to cover with individuals. So my background by trade, of course, is a management consultant, and particularly I focus on change management and organizational development, which includes organizational design. And within those, basically change management is exactly how it sounds. It's dealing with change, major crises in organizations, whether you're changing retention, you're changing things within your turnover. If individuals are separating from the company voluntarily or involuntarily, you may need to change the design of the company if it's hierarchical or a flat structure. For example, maybe the company operates in teams and now it needs to have a flat structure to be more autonomous and just kind of work in groups without hierarchy, meaning board of directors, senior management, other senior leaders, management, and then employees and subordinates. Maybe it needs to be flat across the board and everyone works collectively and cohesively with no major titles. Or maybe you need to change the culture of a company if it's currently toxic and you're dealing with corruption regulation issues, and other issues in companies that they normally face, unethical leadership. Maybe you need changes within that arena. So from a change management perspective, that's what I do, and go into companies and help them with that. Major corporations as well as smaller corporations. And then from an organizational design perspective, as you can see, that intertwines. So that's where the crises part comes from. But my professional background plays a role with my personal background, because I face a lot of crises and adversity as well in my own personal life. And I'll just go through some of them quickly. For example, dealing with homelessness for a number of years. I've dealt with domestic violence relationships, 2 different ones that went on for a few years. And then I had to navigate and figure out strategies of where do those different crises within an individual come from? And then how do I navigate the situation I'm in, but continue to build and thrive in life so that those years aren't stolen from me. Then I've also went through scandals and major betrayals and companies that I've worked with, nonprofit boards I've sat on, all the way down to dealing with family abuse for about a decade that I went through in my younger years. So I noticed this trend, this pattern of dealing with crises, but I'm also a female, and I knew that I wanted to be an executive one day. So I decided to start building businesses while going through these crises so that I can eventually help other organizations as well as women in their businesses, whether in a leadership role in a company or if they own their own organizations, helping them thrive and survive so that I could have meaning and purpose to my actual work that I was doing.
And would you say that the resilience that you showed in all of these instances, was it part of your character, or was it behaviors that you had to learn as you were going through those instances?
I believe it was already part of me. I'm a big believer in God and that He carried me through all of this because He gave me strategies of what to do. However, I had to learn a lot of what I went through and the different strategies by going through it, not just day by day and week by week, month by month, and year by year, but I mean literally second by second and minute by minute of each day, because the adversity was so excruciating. So I had to learn as I went, because I didn't have anyone else to teach me or give me insight or nuggets or wisdom on how to navigate those different adversities or how to be resilient. I didn't have anyone in my life to help me with that until probably about several years after I had come out of the adversity. I was connected to different women in the professional arena that had went through some of the similar things that I went through. And a lot of them are spiritual leaders, like pastors. They own organizations, different entrepreneurs, and women that sit on boards of directors that have written books on adversity, scandals, and betrayals, and different things like that. And so I started learning about them online and then connecting with them in person, and found out that I wasn't the only one going through this. And that's when they started to pour into me and build me up even more. But the years prior to that, basically I had to depend on research, prayer, and devising strategies, and a little bit I had to go off on and built up within myself to get to the point that I am at today.
Wow. I think you mentioned very pertinent aspects of what actually made up your survival. And all of them are important. I think the relationships, the women that were around you at that point in time, and who helped then to build you up at the time when you were at your low. You mentioned your spiritual groundedness, that it actually helped you. Whatever you believe in was actually a good grounding that actually affirmed that tomorrow would be better and there would be a brighter day for you and you could carry on. The third one that you're mentioning is also the research that you took it upon yourself, because there was also that intention that I don't want to be stuck here, which is powerful on its own. It looks like there was a decision that you took as well. I don't know if you want to comment about that.
Yes, I've done a lot of talks on, for example, domestic violence. And when people are in adverse situations, they have a few options that they usually make or take. And you can either stay in it and let that adversity or an abusive situation define who you are and let the person or the circumstance continue to control and dominate you.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can devise strategies while you're in the situation, learn the behaviors of the circumstances you're going through and use them to your advantage to get out of the situation. And then after you come out of that, you can use what you've learned to either help other individuals or just say, well, I made it out and I'm doing fine. And I'll just stay at the level that I'm on and just don't try to advance or grow or move forward. At least I've overcome that. And I'll just, a lot of my colleagues say, remain where they are, stay consistent, stay constant, stay where you are, which basically is, even though you've overcome something, essentially you're still stuck because you don't continue to grow and thrive to be able to blossom into something and use the circumstances that you went through to soar in life, as well as help other individuals overcome as well. So there are a few different roads people can take and normally usually take. But the question is, when you take the road that you decide to take, are you going to stay stuck in a situation, or are you going to use that situation to your advantage? Because you can get delivered from something and still be stuck. You need to figure out what to actually do with the strategies and information you utilize to overcome to ensure that you're not still stuck. And that means mentally first, so that you can get unstuck physically and professionally.
I like the angle that you're taking and where you are actually extending even the concept of resilience, because you're taking it from just resilience, which for me is about how do I go through what I'm going through, as much as this feels like you are pushing a stone up the mountain. How do I go through that? Or you're going through life, meeting different challenges. How do you stick it out? Because you're seeing the end. You have something, you know, as where you're looking towards, but you're also coming up with a powerful end where you have not only used, you know, those instances of crisis for just being resilient, you've also learned to, you know, sort of pivot yourself as well into other things. You've become an author in those times. You say you've built organizations over that time. What is this thing about you that remains calm in crisis? Because it is your demeanor. It was your demeanor when you came online. There is just this person who talks about this past that has been, you know, filled with crisis after crisis and everything else, but you manage to keep your composure and you're calm about life.
I believe that's just the way that God built me. I do have a calmness about it that I've noticed, although things can be excruciating, because a lot of people ask me, you are an executive. When I look at you right now, I don't see a homeless person that went through that for 10 years. I don't see someone that went through family abuse for 10 years, because it doesn't show on you. So how were you this person? But when I look at you, I don't actually see that, because you have a calmness, but at the same time, you have a leadership or a confidence about you that says that you can basically get through any situation or crisis or adversity that you go through. So I've been asked that a lot. And yes, I've developed various organizations to assist individuals with that. But for example, I have a business school where I took the crises that I went through and developed them into keynote speeches that I do, books that I write, that I've written on how to survive scandals and betrayals in corporate America, corporations, things that I went through, and then I would label them as red flags that you see in companies or other individuals, lessons that you can learn, and then strategies and key points on what to do with red flags in your life or adversities that you see when you're going through adversity, but also when you come out of it. So I've written books to help people with that, as well as develop exclusively guest speech talks that I do for women organizations. So you can actually take pieces of information, not only from your academic and professional background, but from your adversity, and turn them into products or services per se. to
Wow.
start an organization or to become an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
So adversity has its advantages. So you need to look at different adversities that you went through, as I mentioned, academically, professionally, and even privately in your own life, and utilize those to pivot and develop different things in life to not only serve you from overcoming and not to become stagnant and comfortable with the adversity or overcoming if you came out of it, but to utilize everything that you went through and basically as a stepping stone to your next entrepreneurship idea, your next career, whatever you would want to do next in life, even a book deal. Utilize those as stepping stones to basically advance in life. So those are some of the strategies that I use. And it didn't come easy. This wasn't overnight. Like I said, it's a mental thing that you actually have to go through each day to devise these strategies. So this took many years for me to get to this mindset. But I think a lot of the women and men watching would appreciate that those different tactics that you use, the strategies that can become your products and services, actually have monetary value attached to them to bring you out of crises that you're actually going through. So there's an advantage there as well. Because, for example, a lot of people are suffering from the pandemic that's going on, not just losing family members, spouses to COVID-19. Employees are leaving companies to search for better opportunities, people losing their income. So there are various things going on, but there are also pieces of information within each of those crises and adverse situations that people can use to actually overcome, thrive, and not be stuck in the adverse situation that they're going through. So I use all that background and things that I've come through. I keep them always at the back of my mind. So while I'm dealing with a woman entrepreneur or a major corporation, for example, looking at their products and services, and I need something new to be innovative so that their company doesn't go under through a pandemic, I look at various things in the company and things they went through to help them devise a strategy and be able to strategically pull out things within individuals and companies to help them monetize their experiences, for example, to be able to come through. Does that kind of answer your question?
It is so powerful. I'm almost looking forward to the next series because you are starting another series right now. I'm sure I will receive a lot of questions from people who will want to take the discussion forward because it is a rare skill. And you know, you have to acknowledge it. It's not an easy thing because people tend to be stuck in what they're going through and there is no more tomorrow. So there are three characteristics that a psychologist I was listening through just before our meeting was saying are important. And she was taking it and relating it to her life, where she had been a consultant on crisis and managing and building up resilience until something tragic happened in her life. And in the context of her life, she was on a trip with her daughter and a friend's daughter, as well as the friend in the same car. And at a split of a second, there was a car accident that took all three of the other people that were in the car. She was the only one remaining. And she had to put into use all of the things that she had been, training people on. And she mentioned three things that were important. She says, resilient people have a way of tuning into the good. In the midst of a crisis, they have a way of just looking for those glimpses or glimmers of hope and glimmers of good, which is exactly what you are mentioning when you are saying, in the midst of the crisis, look at what can be, used for your financial good, what can be converted into an opportunity in what you're doing. The second one she said was, people understand that life happens. Resilient people understand that life happens. And that's a strange one because life, I suppose when it comes to my life, I suppose I do not have the training of having known that life will go up and going down. We always had the notion that there's a tomorrow where everything looks, bright and sparkly and everything is perfect. But he says the resilient people have an understanding that life will have its ups and the downs, and they will take the downs as challenges. And that's why they can be resilient, because they know there's a tomorrow. The third aspect to it is that they hold themselves back in their thoughts, because we're all human. So when you're going through a crisis, you can easily go into, a deep hole of just being overwhelmed. But they somehow have a way of stopping themselves. And in their thoughts, they ask themselves whether, is this helping me? Or is this hampering my progress? And in that way, they're able to pull themselves out. And I think you've mentioned a lot of those in what you're saying. Because nobody thinks about an opportunity as they're going through a crisis. I don't know if you want to comment on that, or if there's anything that you would want to come back with on that.
Yes, all of those 3 points that she mentioned are actually intertwined. For example, the crisis that she went through was losing 3 different individuals in one car accident. Now, I've actually lost a child through a domestic violence relationship, and I won't get into that. That's a topic for a different day. But when I was going through that, most people would say, of course, you go through a grieving process. There's different stages of grieving. And initially, when I wanted to be an executive, my first background was in psychology. So I understand what she's saying, and it actually is true. So when I went through that crisis of losing that, you actually go through different stages of grief, which tries to dominate your life and your work. So you have to make some decisions when you're going through it. And of course, you can monetize things. And the way that I see that story is, one, hypothetically, let's just say that coming out of that, she needed finances, to pay a mortgage, or finances to pay funeral expenses. You have to think about all those things when a death happens. So how are you going to financially handle that, especially if there was no life insurance? So that's one thing to think about, which audience members should also consider, the monetization piece. Then you need to think about your own personal mental health. And of course, you're still grieving at the same time. But if you continue to let the grief go into a particular dimension of grief, I want to just say it like that instead of, there's stages and dimensions. Stages meaning going through a grief stage. One day you're up, one day you're down. And sometimes it can be a deeper grief than others. But a dimension meaning, will you let this turn into fear of driving, anxiety, depression, which can lead to mental issues, psychological mental issues. I mean, on a scale of, I'm just throwing this out here wildly, ADHD, or being diagnosed with schizophrenia. Different things on a different dimension can happen if you let situations take you into that realm. So you need to quickly, and I mean, quickly adjust when you're going through adverse situations to be resilient, because resilient is not just, oh, I went through an adversity and I came out of the adversity and now let me just go ahead and thrive. Resilience can mean step-by-step process as well. So developing a mindset of, I'm not going to let this get the best of me. I am grieving and I acknowledge my grief, but let me make sure that I'm utilizing pieces of the situation to still advance personally, professionally, deal with my family members, deal with my other children if I have them, take care of funeral expenses, but also stop for a moment throughout the week, maybe for an hour or two, and make sure that I'm okay mentally. Do something that's not professionally related, academically related, business related, and take time to adjust, think, and get my thoughts out. I like to do what I call quiet time. So sometimes you need to step back from some things as well to stay mentally sound so that you don't go into those other dimensions of psychological issues that come with adversity, so that you can still stay grounded. You can take walks. For women, you can take a bubble bath. And then there's also professional options that you can utilize as well. such as employee assistance programs. They also have a number of range of the different things that you can do that I can also go into. But there are different things that you need to do in stages in order to cope, for example, with a situation like that, and different things that you need to think about. And even if it helps, write it down on a piece of paper. For example, you went through this tragedy and 3 different individuals died. Yes, that was tragic. Write down all the bad things that are happening from it. For example, you need income, you need to pay this, you have funeral expenses. Even during a pandemic, you're thinking about your job, or you have a job loss, you need to take care of children, how will you eat? So maybe naming the different adverse situations that come from that specific circumstance, and then naming underneath that, even if you have to use a spreadsheet, naming underneath that, what are the opportunities that can come out of this, or the advantages or the positive sides in each of those different categories. And then on a third line, how am I going to get to the positive? What psychological tools, even if you need to go through therapy, what psychological tools, even if you need to call in a management consultant in your firm, what other tools can I use? Do I need to read a book? Do I need to search the internet for female colleagues that have went through what I went through? What tools can you utilize to get to those positive aspects? And then once you start working towards those positive categories, they will eventually, over time, overcome the negative categories that you experience all within that one circumstance.
Now, we spoke briefly before we got in about the saying that you have on your profile. And I'd like us to bring it in the context of now to a female leader who is going through COVID, who is still needing to lead in the office, still targeted with numbers, you know, sales targets and everything. And meanwhile, everything is happening in her personal life. She's losing parents or relatives left, right, and center. She still has to carry staff that are going through similar. And the same person is a single mom who has to take care of the online learning of the children at home.
Yes.
Now, resilience, we spoke about it and said it could be contextual, that you can handle resilience up to a point. Now, we've never seen anything that is to the magnitude of what we're going through right now. What advice would you give to that leader and the female leader? And what are the toolkits you think she has that she can use to really keep her afloat during this time?
I would say, well, most corporations have, like I mentioned, employee assistance programs, and they're called for short EAPS, EAPS, EAPS. But what if you're a woman entrepreneur or you're a small business owner and you don't have that? You can still reach out to different programs that have the elements of those. And I just want to read through a few of them now. But that is one strategy that you can utilize besides the personal strategies that I mentioned that you can do at home, where you take that 1 hour per week to get grounded and, you know, be sound in your mind, do different things to be able to be, I like to be able to hear myself think sometimes, and not just always after work, let me have the news on, let's see what's going on politically, let me attend to the children. Even if you don't have an hour, but you only have 15 minutes, sometimes I even take 5 minutes and I go to what I call my happy place, which is in Malibu, California, on the beach. And I just take myself there 5 minutes, you know, throughout the day to just be calm and sound, even during a workday. This doesn't have to be a weekend activity. This could be while you're at your desk for the day if you need to do it. Take some time to do those different things to stay grounded mentally in your personal life, but that can spill over into your professional life as well. So what if you're dealing with turnover, maybe unethical leadership, pandemics, culture issues in your company, retention, still needing to meet your numbers? So there are various things that you can do to help with that as well. And like I mentioned, they're called EAPS. And some of the things that EAPS actually help with is basically from a corporate training standpoint. Of course, you can bring in individuals to do talks, webinars, and seminars, seeming that we're all online now and working remotely. But these organizations that they hire externally to help you within your company internally work as well for various things that you're going through. And a number of companies utilize this strategy, you know, anywhere from Procter & Gamble to L'Oreal to health insurance companies. And some of the things that they actually help with, just to give people an idea, I'll read it to you now, is childcare, for example. They help you with parenting and child development skills, referring you to individuals that can actually take care of your children during the workday, educational issues, maybe even adoption issues that you face. A lot of different things that you normally wouldn't think that they can help you with. These external companies that they bring in can actually do that. They also help with adult care and elder care. So they can help you be, you know, with caregiver support, taking care of your parents, all the way down to aging issues and psychological issues elders face as they get older, because some women are caregivers. I do know executives that take care of their parents. And so there's a service that can help with that, as well as with adults that have disabilities. So maybe your parent is, you know, moving towards dementia or another illness. So they can help you with resources for that so that you're not alone. And then all the way down to daily living, anything from pet care. Some women have pets, all the way over to planning events, dealing with travel and leisure, recovering from disasters, different services like the ones that I offer. And some people wouldn't believe it, but even home improvement. You can, you know, like myself, you need a house. Some people need a housekeeper, a landscaper, those different tasks that women normally do in the home, you need assistance with. And like the other lady, what if you lose your husband or your husband and your children to an accident or maybe even COVID-19? You have all these issues going on. You need to be an entrepreneur with your small business, still making income, or maybe you work in the corporate world and you need to continue running teams, going to board meetings, staff meetings. So these different services and individuals can help with that. And then the last two categories is legal and finance. Of course, they can help with legal issues from bankruptcy all the way down to savings, retirement, and taxes, to one that I really love, which is my area of expertise, and that's emotional well-being, which is what my doctorate degree was on, looking at the stress, emotional exhaustion issues, all the way down to anxiety and depression that leaders face in companies from different issues that companies encounter that actually falls on leaders to actually deal with. And what they do is they look at stress and anxiety and depression and help you through that from a corporation standpoint or a change management standpoint. And then they also look at how do you transition in life? Maybe you need to reconsider your career, or maybe you need to reconsider your job title. Maybe you want a different job title to be promoted, or maybe you want to step down and do tasks that won't have you as much consumed because you need to take care of your children and do online learning, as well as they can also help you with grief and trauma services. I know a lot of psychotherapists that they call, psychologists that come in that work hand in hand with change management consultants because the issues are intertwined. So there are various things that you can assist. Oh, I want to mention workplace issues, and this is a big one, addiction and recovery, because adverse issues I've seen in my own family, which I didn't want to be a product of. A lot of the women, when going through adversity, they would either do drugs, utilize alcohol, or utilize smoking, or some other element or circumstance or situation to suppress the psychological or depression or anxiety they let themselves go into after an adverse circumstance. Women I've seen have drunk themselves to death in my family. So those are other issues you want to be concerned about is after going through adversity, when you're trying to be resilient, don't let the negative circumstance or pandemic take you into, oh, I have to do this. I have to deal with the children, home improvements. I need a landscaper. I need income on top of all this to take care of the mortgage. You don't want to let that drive you into, well, I'm just going to go get a bottle of alcohol and just sit on the couch, and this will be my my
coping strategy,
quiet time, my quiet time on the beach, and just drink yourself to death, and then you never wake up again. So you don't want it to get that far. So there are various things an EAP can help with, as well as a management consultant. Maybe you need to call a consultant in to help you, or, you know, build relationships with other women that went through those circumstances, or read a book. So there are a lot of different things that you can do. But the main key point I would recommend is utilizing either a sheet of paper that I mentioned, or develop a spreadsheet of what is the adversity, what is the positive that can come out of this, and what tools that I can use to get to those positives, so that the negative circumstances, the components of it, don't actually overtake me.
So Dr. Kyla, if the ladies want to reach out to you, they've heard that speak and they are so keen now on just taking the discussion further, how do they find you?
Well, I'm online at drkylalatrice.com, and I'm currently moving the website from just being a personal website over into my corporation, which is Miss Kyla Latrice Incorporated. So the best place to reach out to me is either Google that, or I'm always on LinkedIn, so they can reach out to me there as well. At, of course, my name, Kyla Latrice Tenen. And then if they're on social media, which a lot of women are, I'm on Instagram as well as Facebook. I have a fan page there. I'm not on both of those a lot of times, but I do check it. And it's at Dr. Kyla Latrice, DrKyla But like I mentioned, the best place would be to go to LinkedIn and send me a message or send me a request.
Oh, wonderful. And then the books that you've written, what are the books about, so that the ladies, if maybe there is somewhere they can go for the help, as well as the toolkits that you talk about, because it's not a natural gift for someone to think of opportunities as they're going through adversity. Maybe they can find some jewels of wisdom there?
Yes. As I mentioned, you can go to the website, Google it if you forget how to spell the name. And the different books have to actually deal with the circumstances I went through those crises, such as how do I come out of scandal? How do I come out of betrayals? And then I also, believe it or not, have books on how do I deal with health when going through those crises. Because after coming out of the psychology realm, I thought, well, maybe I'm supposed to help women with health issues or psychological issues. So I'll become a doctor as far as an OB/GYN is concerned, but realized that wasn't correct. So I went into a DM program. So I utilized those books to talk about the health component. For example, when going through the adversity, I gained about 150 pounds. So it's about 300 pounds. So in those books, I talk about what do you eat during times of crises, and how to get your health under control, and how to lose all that weight. So I give strategies for how to do that as well throughout your days and weeks. And then, like I mentioned, I have the courses, which you can take online. And then every now and then, when I'm not busy as an executive, I do webinars. And so I have different packages for all those different things, whether it's free or whether it's paid. And all of those are linked to the website, which I'm building into different courses that I will be shifting over to our business school as well.
Well, it's been phenomenal for me. I've certainly learned a lot. It was much more enriching for me sitting on this side and just learning about your journey and what you have learned and have put to good use. I think it's actually jewels of wisdom, because we only think about survival in moments of crisis. We don't actually think that you can turn the whole phase and the journey into something that could be worthwhile, even financially. Thank you so much for making the time. And I'm sure you at least got across everything that you wanted to get across, because we really had an in-depth discussion. I do appreciate you. And I really am thankful that you are courageous enough to tell your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope that everyone got something out of the talk. If you have a question, again, reach out to me, or maybe if there's something I mentioned or didn't mention, or that you need to know more about because you feel that there's more information behind the scenes that I didn't actually reveal, that I've forgotten to mention, please feel free to reach out to me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much and have a fantastic day further.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.